What is the captive wildlife crisis? The private ownership and display of exotic animals have long been used to demonstrate wealth or power for individuals needing a little extra compensation for their ego. Yet in recent years, the ownership of captive wild animals has accelerated at a disastrous pace. The captive wildlife crisis truly has grown into a huge problem. But why? Early in the century, captive wild animals were primarily used by wealthy individuals, circuses, or trainers, but the problem was limited to just a small number of people. All that changed when zoos began breeding and then offloading excess animals into the private sector to make room for newborn cubs that would draw in more visitors. Soon, it became easier to own a tiger or lion. Small makeshift roadside zoos began springing up across the country. The market for young tiger cubs grew exponentially, and breeding became a big business. Driving the demand was money. Wild animals were used to attract customers through marketing gimmicks and promotions. For example, Exxon's "Put a Tiger in Your Tank" marketing campaign single-handedly resulted in thousands of tigers being put on display at gas stations across the country, hoping to capitalize on the hype. As demand grew, so did the black market. Grassroots animal auctions began selling exotic animals of all types to a growing number of buyers willing to shell out the big bucks. The animals were nothing more than a commodity to be used to make money. And people loved it. Imagine fueling up the car while the kids check out a tiger. For many, it was a huge thrill, and demand drove the supply up immensely. In the late 90s to early 2000s, it's estimated that over 30,000 exotic animals were being held in private collections. Living conditions were truly horrible for these animals, who spent their entire existence in small cages or in concrete pits. Soon, people began to take notice and started to complain. The passing of the U.S. Endangered Species Act meant that many of the worst violators were eventually shut down. Yet the breeders and bigger operations shifted to become more organized and more effective at avoiding detection. As these larger breeding organizations began to emerge, they profited by selling young cubs on the black market, along with animal skins, teeth, claws, and even whiskers. Pet a Baby Tiger attractions appeared in malls across the country, in mobile exhibits that were easily moved from city to city. These larger organizations like Tim Stark's Wildlife in Need and Joe Exotic's GW Zoo were masters of manipulating the system and avoided being shut down. One of the biggest issues is that it's nearly impossible to keep track of how many animals there are or where they're being bought and sold. Much like a chess game, the breeders work to constantly stay one move ahead, finding loopholes in the system that let them keep growing. If the authorities shut them down in one state, they just pack up their animals and move to another state and start over while making a ton of money in the process. Today, there are over 20,000 captive wild animals in roadside zoos and attractions across the U.S., yet we know there are many, many more that are unaccounted for. Each of these captive animals represent a highly organized grassroots system of breeders, auctions, and consumers built on enslavement merely to make a profit. So, like so many things in this world, the captive wildlife crisis comes down to one thing: cold, hard cash.